I just want women to know that there's no reason to be afraid of these hormones. Your body's been making them for years. More women die of a heart attack than anything else. HRT is one of the best strategies that we've got besides.
Welcome to Wellness, your ultimate guide to unlocking your full human potential through biohacking. I'm your host, Ashley Deely. I'm a certified sports nutrition coach, former personal trainer and Pilates instructor, and I have a degree in kinesiology. My goal is to help you improve the quality of your life. When you leave a review on any streaming app, it helps listeners just like you find this hidden health information faster. Do your feet ever ache after a long day of walking, or do you ever get a sharp pain up through your foot? I used to feel that way too, until I switched to a zero heel drop shoe. Peluva gives you the most authentic barefoot experience, and you can feel the difference. The secret is the 5-toe design, which allows for the correct dynamic movement of your foot. Whether you're a hiker, gym goer, or just someone who spends time on your feet, you have to try Peluvas. Visit peluva.com/Ashley Deely. That's peluva.com/Ashley Deely. If you're serious about clean living, you need to be serious about your supplements too. I trust Synchronicity Health, not only because I had the founder on my show, but because he uses pure potent ingredients. Melatonin and Kamana help me sleep. Clarity gives me energy throughout the day and is also made with huperzine A potent ingredient which can help you fight dementia. Go to synchronicityhealth.com/Ashley Deely. That's synchronicityhealth.com/Ashley Deely. As always, you can find these links in the show notes. Today's guest is Dr. Mariza Snyder, a powerhouse advocate for midlife women, leveraging 17 plus years as a practitioner, author, and speaker to spark a massive movement for women in perimenopause and beyond. Dr. Mariza is the author of The Perimenopause Revolution, one of my favorite books for women over 30. She's also the host of her own podcast called Energized with Dr. Mariza. She's the ultimate resource for women navigating perimenopause. And she offers practical tips of how to get pregnant in your late 30s and 40s. If you're struggling with sleep issues, rage, irritability, moodiness, or you just don't feel like yourself, you may be in perimenopause. And Dr. Mariza is here to give you practical steps, guidelines, and to share what's worked for her, as well as thousands of women experiencing the same symptoms. Perimenopause is more than hot flashes and moodiness. Dr. Mariza dives into why it's so much more and how you can navigate it. Mariza, welcome to Wellness.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, it is my pleasure to have you. And I really want to know, how does a woman know if she's in perimenopause?
Ooh, love this question. This is a question I get all the time in my clinic, in community. Women want to know what is going on because, as you know, perimenopause does not announce itself, not on a single particular day. It doesn't announce itself with a test. It's a clinical diagnosis based on symptoms, age, and menstrual cycle changes. And so it's all of those things combined. You know, I had a patient a couple weeks ago who came to me and she said, you know, if I had met with you 2 months ago, I would have told you not perimenopause. She's like, but things have changed in the last 2 months that I'm pretty sure that maybe this is what it is. And that's how quickly it can happen for some of us. We can feel a shift within a couple of months. For others, it can be very, very subtle and we have no idea we're in it for a few years.
All right. Well, I feel like that lady is lucky to only have some symptoms and not know what it was for 2 months.
Just for 2 months. I know. It's very rare. But whether it's 2 months or it's 2 years, the reason why I love having this conversation is, women not feeling like themselves and also not getting the support that they deserve. It's so unnecessary. Like we've got to do better when it comes to women's health and supporting women in this transition, because I believe that no woman deserves to suffer needlessly, particularly in perimenopause. The reason why perimenopause is having a moment is women are like, okay, like no more. I am not suffering anymore. I am going to get the support that I deserve. And then that's why I'm so happy that we're having this conversation.
Yes. Also, I am so happy. And I also wish that you wrote your book sooner, because when I started having symptoms, Mariza, I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I am the healthiest person that I know. So I started listening to every podcast, researching everything I could until I finally heard the word perimenopause but no one had mentioned it to me the 37 years leading up to that moment.
Many of us grew up, no one had talked about it. Maybe we knew about menopause, that defining moment where we haven't had a period in 12 consecutive months. But otherwise, this profound transition where hormones are wildly fluctuating and our entire body is under a major home remodel. Somehow that was getting brushed under the rug as aging, as too much stress, as not moving enough, as anxiety or depression. It was misdiagnosed. We get to do better for women. So we can talk a little bit about how we define perimenopause. What are some of those early symptoms? But ultimately, what I want women to know is that you are not broken. You are going through a profound hormone shift that is impacting every organ system of the body. And those symptoms and signs, that is your body asking for a new level of support. Basically, what got you here isn't going to get you to the next level, into the next chapter. And that is okay, as long as we understand that.
I just wish someone would have told me, hey, your 5:30 a.m. workouts in this routine that you're on, where life is so good, is going to have an abrupt change.
Yeah. I know. You're like, can I just keep it? Can I just have it? And that's the thing about perimenopause, that there's this inflection point, whether it's an immune system inflection point, a metabolic inflection point, basically a bandwidth inflection point, where all of a sudden the things that we were doing and we were doing well and maybe even effortlessly come up for review. And I think that's where women feel like they don't feel like themselves anymore, because it can feel like a profound identity shift. And it's the reason, we're thinking again, that 8 weeks prior, you were able to do all the things, you could handle the 100 tabs, things were effortless. You were saying yes to things that probably you didn't even want to say yes to, but it's because you could. You're like, you know what? I could pull that off. Like, I could maybe not sleep, another hour tonight. Like, we could do these things. And then all of a sudden we hit perimenopause and our bandwidth begins to shift. And we even though that we're capable, we have done it in the past, we know what we have, we had the capability of doing, all of a sudden our capacity begins to shrink in a way. Let's be honest, in our mental capacity, our emotional capacity. And that really can throw us for a loop, because we've said yes to all these things. We signed up for all these obligations. We're managing all of these areas in our life. And we now have to get really clear about what our non-negotiables are, how we are reprioritizing ourselves, and what boundaries we get to create, so that we're protecting our energy and our peace. I loved my 5 a.m. workouts, and now there's 6:30 workouts, and so I've had to just renegotiate. What does it get to look like in this phase? And how do I still honor movement, honor my muscles, honor my immune system, honor my energy capacity, while also protecting my peace and protecting my energy ultimately? Because if waking up at 5 o'clock or 5:30 is burning you out, I'd argue that it's really not doing you any favors. We have to renegotiate that time.
So tell me more about perimenopause, what it is, and specifically your journey.
Yeah, I love this question. I want to first define perimenopause, if that is okay. And I want to define it throughout the kind of the lifetime for a woman's body. Throughout our lifetime, we have three major hormone shifts. Because this is going to give us a little bit of context, because I think it's important to note that this isn't the only hormone shift that we encounter. And I think we could even argue that every month, every single day. I always say to my patients, you are a different person every day, because these hormones are shifting every single day rhythmically throughout your cycle. And, I am convinced that estrogen is the accommodation hormone, where we are accommodating to our family, to people, to life. And when that hormone begins to erratically decline, accommodation goes out the door. And we see that as well in first puberty, right? Where we get our period, maybe it's 11, 12, unfortunately it's happening a little bit sooner nowadays due to endocrine disruption and metabolic issues. But ultimately we have these hormones that are coming online. And let me tell you, it's not a day and time. It's not even a month in time where these hormones are coming online to our reproductive years. We're talking about 4 to 6+ years of these hormones beginning to rhythmically cycle. And that will, not only is that destabilizing, but it's also deeply transformative. And the brain goes through a massive neuroendocrine transition as we slough off kind of being a really young girl into womanhood. And that is a process. And we think about puberty, we think about girls being anxious and and having angst and mood swings and just like working it out. And we have a lot of extra grace for our girls as they're navigating that, at least most of the time. Like we get that that is a transition. That second transition, that if a woman chooses to or they get to do so, is going to be pregnancy and postpartum. And if you've ever been a mom, you know that who you are as a mother is not who you were. Like you'll never go back to the woman you were before you are a mother. And I can speak to this wholeheartedly because I am a mom. And I will tell you, my brain, like I always tell my son every day, that my number one job in this world is to keep you safe. And that is literally what my brain hardwired during pregnancy and postpartum to do, is keep this child safe at all costs. And to the point where we can actually smell our child in a lineup of like many, many babies. Like it's impressive the amount of the brain recalibration that goes into pregnancy and postpartum. And then the third big neuroendocrine transition is going to be second puberty. Now, this is the descension of our childbearing years. And instead of hormones coming online, we have hormones coming offline. And we know that this has a profound impact on all areas of the brain, including the hippocampus, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, our neurotransmitters, the way that we create energy metabolism in the brain. And it's no wonder women feel this major shift in their emotional state and their cognitive state throughout the perimenopause transition. So perimenopause is specifically defined as the 4 to 10 year plus transition as ovaries are winding down due to a decline in our egg supply. And as a result, that miscommunication between the brain and the ovaries, which is called the HPO axis, the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, it's like playing telephone with a bunch of 5-year-olds. The message is going to get really garbled. The ovaries are like, "Hey, I'm pretty much retiring." The brain's like, "Keep going." And so in that disconnection of the conversation that's going on between the ovaries and the brain, that causes fluctuations, wild fluctuations, and ultimate declines in these whole body hormones that are impacting every single system. And that's why perimenopause can lead to over 40 plus symptoms, physical and emotional and cognitive.
You gave us a lot of information there. So I want to break it down and
There's
go
the
back on a
breakdown.
couple things. So it's puberty, pregnancy, and then the second coming of puberty, which is perimenopause. But did I hear you say that it can last up to 10 years, Mariza?
Yeah. No, we're talking a career, Ashley, is what we're talking about. Yeah. And I will tell you that the majority of my patients and community members, and probably a lot of your ladies as well, it is, on average, women are in this 7 to 10 years. I rarely meet somebody who gets the 4-year transition.
That sounds
And
great.
if you do, like, don't tell people. I'm just kidding.
Well, I also heard that there's a very slim, I think 1 to 2% population of women who experience no symptoms, but they still go through it.
This is a big part of the book that I think it's really important. Number one, I remember talking to my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law about perimenopause. And my mother-in-law is like, "Well, I didn't go through it." And it's because the way that we defined perimenopause up until the last few years was that perimenopause was menopausal symptoms. It was hot flashes, it was low libido, it was night sweats, maybe some sleep issues, and vaginal dryness or general urinary symptoms of menopause. And if you didn't have those symptoms, then you didn't go through perimenopause. And so now we know that there's a breadth of things, from frozen shoulder to phantom smells, to forgetting why you walk into a room, to not having stress resilience, to not being able to multitask the way that you used to, and even not having good workout recovery. Like all of that can be perimenopause. And so I think the way that we define perimenopause is really interesting, and that the kind of the broadened changes that happen during peri has definitely increased. But also the second thing is that a lot of things that are happening in perimenopause are silent. It's the silent shifts that I want women to be mindful of. And that is the creeping blood pressure and creeping lipids. So we see cardiometabolic changes happening during perimenopause that lead to future health outcomes over time. And again, a lot of these things aren't presenting themselves until our 60s and our 70s, but they are developing in our 40s. And we can see them in biomarkers. I see creeping inflammation. I see creeping blood glucose. So more women get diagnosed with prediabetes in the perimenopause transition than other times in their lives. I will see bone loss. The greatest amount of bone loss that we'll experience is going to be in late perimenopause and the first couple of years of menopause. Muscle loss. We go from 3 to 8% of muscle loss in our 30s and into our early 40s. We go to 5 to 10% of muscle loss in our late 40s into early 50s. And so these are silent shifts that are happening: neuroinflammation, gut microbiome diversity changes. And those silent shifts can ultimately lend to greater all-cause mortality down the road.
We will make sure that we put this in the show notes because I think that's really important, what you touched on, that these silent symptoms are going on and nobody tells you maybe until it's too late.
Well, we're not looking at these things until it's too late. We're not recommending a DEXA until a woman is 65 years old, although we know she's
Right?
losing bone in her 40s. We know women are losing muscle in their 40s as well. We're not diagnosing diabetes until she's 126 milligrams per deciliter, where she could have been at 99 milligrams per deciliter on the cusp of prediabetes at 45 years old. More women than men will be obese or overweight by the time they're 45 years old. At least one marker of metabolic dysfunction will happen to 98% of women by the time they're in their mid to late 40s. These are the silent shifts that are happening on a physiological level that it's important that we're paying attention to, but often are dismissed because, oh, well, you're just in perimenopause and this is the zone of chaos. But it's important to note this is a metabolic inflection point and it's a window of vulnerability, which offers a window of opportunity. So often we're told, well, don't worry about any of these things until you're in menopause, but the changes are actually happening in peri. Symptoms
Yes.
are not just nuisances. Hot flashes aren't just a nuisance or night sweats. These are indicating bigger physiological issues.
Yes. And I want to go back to what you had mentioned about symptoms. I have a story I've never shared
Tell
on this
me,
podcast
yes.
before, but when I was in high school, I would journal every night. So I'm in high school, I'm in bed journaling about my day. And then all of a sudden, my door busts open and it's my mom. She's furious. And she goes, "Are you smoking down here?" I was like,
Your mom was having phantom smells. Oh my goodness. So you're telling me you were in puberty and she was in second puberty at the
"Yes,
same time?
yes." So this is the phantom smell that you were talking about because I have no interest in smoking cigarettes. I am the healthiest person I've always known. But when I remembered that story, I was like, "Oh, she was totally in perimenopause."
Yeah, or how your mom can hear you chomping cereal from upstairs to downstairs and just, like I have so many moms who or women who are now in postmenopause. I was talking to my dear friend Dr. Mindy Pels, and she was telling the story about how her son had just come back from soccer practice and was eating cereal downstairs and she could hear it from her bedroom. And she came downstairs and was like, "What are you doing?" And it's just again, you just don't have the bandwidth. You don't have the same emotional resilience, or you're having these weird symptoms that triggers you to react. Because if you're maybe not in perimenopause, your mom probably would never have smelled that phantom smell, but also would have maybe responded in a different way. You just
Yes. Yes.
not coming
Okay.
in guns a blazing, like
I still remember it because where I was journaling, I like went off the paper.
yeah, you're like, I have evidence.
So the reason I knew I was in perimenopause, again, before I heard the word, was because I started waking up between 2 or 3 in the morning and I would always sleep perfectly. So I knew something was wrong. Can you
Mm.
walk us through your story and other symptoms?
Yeah, I would love to. I was blindsided by perimenopause, despite the fact that I have been in clinical practice for 17 years and 98% of my patients have been women in midlife, have been women in perimenopause. But I will tell you, it's one thing to help women go through it. It's another thing when it begins to happen to you. And for me, it was subtle. And I always tell women, many of us, well, we all have lived a life. by the time we get to our late 30s, early 40s. And many of us have probably had a health issue or two, maybe a thyroid issue, polycystic ovarian syndrome, irregular menstrual cycles, burnout, a deregulated stress response system, maybe sprinkle some trauma on top of that. And so when these symptoms begin to happen due to hormones wildly fluctuating, it could feel like a lot of things you've experienced in the past. So it's really easy to gaslight yourself or to doubt yourself. And that was what was happening for me. Is initially I was like anything but. This can't be perimenopause. And my son was 2 years old. This is when I was 43. I was still breastfeeding. I had just come out of postpartum. My period had just come back online like 4 months prior. Like finally, I felt amazing. Actually, I was training in the gym sometimes twice a day. That's how great I had felt. And I hadn't been
Yeah.
doing that since my early to mid 30s. I was like, I am winning the game of motherhood in life right now. I was sleeping amazing. I had mental capacity. I had emotional capacity. I was literally superwoman incarnate. Okay. And then 5 months into my feeling like a superwoman, I'm not going to lie, I may have taken advantage of my superwoman energy. I may have pushed a little bit. I definitely have a tendency to do that. I literally fell off a proverbial cliff. All of a sudden, I was not recovering from workouts. I was burning out. I felt like a puddle on the ground on the back end of a workout. And that's kind of a proxy for me of like, oh no, like I can't function after the gym session. Like that's a concern. I had crazy mental fatigue. I had crazy brain fog. I had no resilience, like no stress resilience, no emotional resilience. I was irritated. I was experiencing rage. I was like, what is going on? And I really thought it was low thyroid function initially and Hashimoto's. And it wasn't until I had rage for 3 consecutive months in a row, like clockwork on day 22 or day 23, that I finally knew, like, send me a sign, make it impossible for me to miss. Okay. Clockwork rage in my cycle in the luteal phase. I'm like, this is perimenopause. But it took me tracking my cycle, tracking my symptoms against my cycle to finally know that. So I always find like perimenopause is a process of elimination. Is it any of these things? Is it can I like handle, or is it this over here? Or is it a yes and? It's so often two things can be true.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Oh my
that was when I was like, okay. And then once I knew, like I was like, now I can start implementing the tools. Like HRT.
Okay, I really want to get into HRT, but I wanted to go back to what you said about rage and luteal phase.
Yeah, let's talk about the luteal phase of your cycle. And let's just talk about the mechanisms of the two big phases of this beautiful ovulatory cycle. So we've got our follicular phase, and I think that's the phase that we all love and know really well. And we have that estradiol peak that usually happens between day 10 and day 13. And I always joke that everybody loves day 11, day 12 us, right? Including us. Like you can push hard in the gym, you are feeling sensual, you're feeling loving, you have energy and capacity and confidence and motivation, like top of the world superwoman energy heading into ovulation. And for good reason. I mean, if we want to continue the species forward, we need to have this level of woman sensual energy heading into the ovulation phase. And then on the back end, how we were built in terms of biology was that the body's like, well, every month, whether you like it or not, we're priming for pregnancy. We're priming for conception. And we're just going to act as if. We're just going to, you know what? We're going to just, maybe you got pregnant. I don't know. And so in the luteal phase of our cycle, it's really a time of just how we're built physiologically as a time to kind of go more inward, to kind of prime and prep the body in case. So we have more energy expenditure, more mitochondrial energy is being created for the possibility of conception. And we're requiring more calories. Our metabolic rate is up, as I mentioned just a second ago. And so all of this is happening. Progesterone is on the rise, that progestation hormone to maintain that pregnancy. But in perimenopause, if we're not ovulating every single month, so anovulatory cycles, or ovulation is just not as robust as it used to be, or even estrogen is not showing up as well as it used to be as well, we are not creating as much progesterone on the other side in that luteal phase. And so what that looks like, if your typical luteal phase was like, hey, I'm going inward, this is during your childbearing years, I get a little bit of PMS. I feel like my workouts can't be as hardcore as they used to be. Now, like, just ratchet it up a whole lot. And now we've got a situation where progesterone isn't even showing up or showing up significantly less than it used to. And women are noticing PMS symptoms not being just 2 to 3 days, but now being 5 to 7 to 8 to 9 days. All of a sudden, the entire luteal phase starts to stretch as one long PMS cycle. We notice less stress tolerance. Our sleep is becoming an issue. And maybe sleep was fine in the follicular phase, but now it's not. It's not fine in the luteal phase. And so we'll begin to notice a lot of the mood related changes, sleep related changes, and cognitive related changes in the luteal phase, at least in the beginning of perimenopause. Eventually, it's going to start stretching throughout your entire cycle because you'll start to miss and skip cycles. Like your cycles become extremely irregular as you move into late perimenopause.
So many things to look
I know.
forward to.
Yeah. And so, there's a lot of things. Luckily, once you identify, and that's why I always say track your cycle every single month, but more importantly, track your symptoms along your cycle. Is rage happening on day 24 pretty consistently every single month? And if it is, you get to have a very vulnerable conversation with your partner. You get to clear off your calendar, make more space to have more bandwidth for yourself, create more solo walks or more time where you're screaming into the pillow or screaming in your car. Like, well, girl, do whatever you got to do. Like, maybe you're going to a breathwork class during those times, or you get your, you tell your partner, I need you take over bedtime routine if you've got kids, or you take over bath time routine. Like, I just need time to myself. So whatever that looks like for you, if you're tracking your cycle, you can know it's coming as well. Because again, it's easy to gaslight ourselves even in perimenopause when we know we're in perimenopause, because there's so much to do. The plates are spinning, the obligations don't stop. Like, life doesn't stop because you're going through this phase. It's going to be up to us to really tend to our bodies and tend to our emotional and mental bandwidth as we navigate this transition. And unfortunately, no one's going to look out for you the way that you're going to look out for you.
That's what I was going to say. You have to be an advocate for yourself. And instead of being dismissed, you have to say, I want HRT. I want these modalities to help ease my symptoms and make me the best person that I can be.
Absolutely. Or I want 2 hours to myself. Or I want a Saturday afternoon with my friends. Like, not only advocating for yourself in the doctor's office, and we can spend a little bit of time on that 100%, but also advocating for yourself in your household, advocating for yourself with your partner, becoming more discerning, and also delegating. We have a lot of things coming up, including my son's 5th birthday. My son has 3 birthday parties. And yesterday I drove to LA for a podcast. I did a 2-hour continuing education perimenopause program for clinicians yesterday afternoon. And then I went to a book event. I got home straight. My son is not in bed. It's bedtime. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm just trying to, just barely got home. So I'm all up in that. And then we finally get him to sleep. And my husband's like rattling off a million things. And my brain is going to explode. It hurts at this point in the day. I feel pressure. And I just say vulnerably, I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I'm so sorry, but I don't have the brain capacity. My brain hurts. I said, can we deal with this in the morning? Or is there any of this that you want to hand over to me that you can take care of yourself?
I think this is why it's so helpful to have a supportive partner, because I delegate so many things to my husband and he just takes care of them. He is so supportive around everything that I want to try, including HRT.
Yes. Oh, girl, don't think I didn't take my oral micronized progesterone last night. I definitely did.
Tell me more about what progesterone does.
Yes, I love this question. Progesterone does so much more than we think. And the way that it's prescribed in your doctor's office, although this is shifting and changing, is that often, I just want to just break down if this is what you're experiencing. Sometimes your doctors don't know the difference between progesterone and progestins. So progestins is what you'll find in a mini pill. Progestins is what you're going to find in the Mirena IUD or any kind of hormonal contraceptive type IUD, except for the copper. So when you ask for that, they may confuse that for, oh, you're looking for hormonal birth control in perimenopause. And that is really the gold standard of care when you go to your doctor. And so we got to really be clear about you want progesterone. The only other reason why we are prescribing progesterone today, unfortunately, is that it's protecting your uterus when you get on estrogen. So we think that the only benefit of progesterone, oral micronized progesterone, is that it's a uterine protector so that we don't develop basically a thickening of the endometrial layer of your uterus, that we don't lead to endometrial cancer. When estrogen is unopposed, it can get a little crazy, a little wonky, fibroids, kind of that endometrial layer that is becoming more thick and also lending to cells that are misbehaving, basically. So when you go and you're asking for oral micronized progesterone, you do really want to be clear about it's sleep that you're struggling with. It is mood swings that you're struggling with. It's the luteal phase of your cycle that you're struggling with. And so you're going to have to use some trigger words to kind of get oral micronized progesterone, but you're going to have to be really specific and explicit about why you want oral micronized progesterone. So what oral micronized or what progesterone does besides reduce inflammation in the body is it is a neurosteroid. And really all these hormones are neurosteroids, including estrogen. But progesterone becomes allopregnanolone in the brain, and it activates GABA A receptors. And we think about GABA, it's like the brake system for calming the brain, helping the body get to sleep, reducing anxiety and mood swings and irritability. Progesterone, when it stops showing up and we don't have a robust amount of it as allopregnanolone in the brain, it doesn't activate GABA. And also GABA is declining too because we are seeing a decline in estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. So that's happening over here. And then it's not being activated because we don't have that allopregnanolone. As a result, what those PMS symptoms are like, those late luteal symptoms are like.
Oh, great.
Yes. And ultimately sleep as well. In terms of, I wanted to share with you what it's doing, but then also how do you advocate for it? Typically, when you go to your doctor, if they are going to prescribe oral micronized progesterone, it comes in 100 milligram tablets and 200 milligram tablets. It's called Prometrium. It's very inexpensive. It's FDA approved for safety and efficacy. But if you are struggling with sleep, and those other natural sleep strategies like L-theanine and valerian root and magnesium and even pharmagaba, they're just not cutting it for you, or that sleepy tea. And even oral micronized progesterone is not stopping the early wake up times, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. You can actually go and work with a functional practitioner or somebody or naturopathic doctor who could prescribe an extended compounded progesterone. And again, it's more money because oral micronized Prometrium is like $7, $10, $12 at your local CVS or Walgreens or drugstore. But a compounded, you have to go to a compounded pharmacy. But I have so many patients where they are on an extended oral
That's me.
progesterone. Yes, yay. And holy moly, you're sleeping all night long, which is so amazing.
Hallelujah.
I love that, Ashley. I don't meet that many women who are on an extended progesterone, but I always want to bring it to the forefront. And how is it working for you? Talk to me about it.
It's a game changer. It was the thing that really moved the needle for me. When I first learned about progesterone, I bought some wild yam drops from Amazon and I started taking it. It really didn't do much. And then I started working with a functional medicine doctor, and that's when I had the right dosage. I think something that not many people are talking about is that they're dosing themselves. They're finding progesterone on Amazon or online somewhere, and they're taking a microdose.
A microdose. We're talking about 20 milligrams. I think we really can't, again, over the counter. And it's usually a cream or a serum. And you have to understand that the molecule of progesterone doesn't absorb really easily into the skin. So there's that. But then serums and creams that are progesterone derived or wild yam derived. Again, oral micronized progesterone is derived from wild yams as well. It's done at a higher dose and it's done appropriately. So a lot of the creams and the serums on the market are just not going to get the job done. One, because it's not done well. And then two, it's not enough of a dosage to make a difference. And so like the highest dose I will see out and about in the world is usually 50. And 50 can move the needle a little bit, but not typically, usually orally, but not topically. Topical progesterone, it's often not going to get the job done enough to really notice a difference. So just a heads up. Although I do have patients who will take the oral micronized progesterone at night. The extended is great because it will go into the morning. I know people wake up with anxiety or waking up with that angst because of the endless to-do list. I get it. I get it, ladies. I totally understand. You wake up and you're just like, oh my God, have you seen the list from yesterday that comes into today? So I have a lot of patients and colleagues who wake up with anxiety. And an extended release progesterone can actually ease a lot of that in the morning as well. But a serum or a cream at 50 milligrams, and again, you have to work with your provider. It's everybody's case by case, can also ease some of that as well. So you take your oral at night, and then you have a little bit of a topical during the day to kind of ease things out.
Ease the rage.
Ease the rage. And again, there's a lot of other things that you can take to ease the rage as well, and kind of figuring out what even magnesium glycinate can help with that a little bit, or chaseberry or holy basil, like an adaptogenic blend that you can do. But again, I'm a big fan of progesterone too. So
I'd love to hear when you recommend taking it, because when I first started working with someone, I started taking progesterone every day and then I started spotting. So I thought, oh, maybe I should
mm,
back off.
yeah, I love this question. And again, this is just general information. I talk a lot about this in the book, The Perimenopause Revolution, as well. You have to understand that when we're in perimenopause, particularly early perimenopause, we are still cycling. That means the ovaries are still making hormones. Now, a bet less or inconsistent. It's a wild roller coaster ride. Some days, like if you ever look at hormones in perimenopause, it looks like the Richter scale. It's just up and down, up and down. And so progesterone levels can be robust one day and completely tanking the next day. But at the end of the day, they are declining. That's ultimately what's going on. And so in early peri, the reason why women are told, oh, you're too young, or just be lucky you have a period, or it's just aging, is because how we always diagnosed perimenopause was that you were skipping periods more than a month or two, or you were having major irregular periods. That meant you were really close to menopause. And so because we're still cycling, and for many of us, we're still making progesterone, we're still making estrogen. We need estrogen on the front side of the follicular phase to not only activate the release of that egg in ovulation, but also prime up progesterone receptors on the back end in the luteal phase. And so if we are taking progesterone, oral micronized progesterone continuously, that means every single day in your cycle, during a time where you're still cycling like you still have a rhythmic dose of hormones, in a way, it's going to act as hormonal birth control. You're kind of taking a mini pill at this point. So it's gonna mess with spotting. It's gonna mess with irregular cycles. It may even turn off your cycle depending on the person. And that's what a mini pill is supposed to do. Now that's a progestin, but it's acting in a similar fashion to progesterone. So note that if you're continuously using it, you're most likely going to be turning off your cycle, or you're going to see spotting, you're going to see changes, you're going to see lighter periods. So what is recommended is that you're cycling it. So you were taking it in the second half of your cycle during the luteal phase, usually after ovulation. That's why it's, again, really important to track to kind of nail that timeline. I know some doctors will just be like, well, just take it 13 days off, 13 days on. And I would say that maybe don't aim for the 13 days that you're in the follicular phase to be taking oral micronized progesterone. Maybe aim for the luteal phase to take it. So I think it's a little bit, mismanaged in terms of education of just saying 13 days on, 13 days off. It actually really needs to be in the luteal phase of your cycle. That's when you're making it. That's the only time you're making it. The only way that you make progesterone is that you ovulate and the corpus luteum releases progesterone into the back end of that cycle in the luteal phase. That's how it works.
What if you are in your late 40s and you're consistently skipping periods? What do you do with progesterone then?
Continuous usage. I mean, it just depends. It depends on who you're talking to in terms of a provider. And there's a lot of different strategies and techniques for implementing hormone replacement therapy. Your conventional doctor, if you're in late perimenopause and you are skipping periods at this point more than 60 days, and your sleep is terrible, you have severe brain fog, you're having severe anxiety and depression, they are going to say, hey, at this point in time, take it every single day. And that would be, my general consensus as well. Now, you have other people on the spectrum of optimization and longevity where they will tell you to keep cycling it. But just understand that if you continue to cycle progesterone throughout late perimenopause, into menopause, and postmenopause, you will most likely initiate a bleed because it's going to be a withdrawal bleed. And so it's a lot of back and forth about what is the optimal way to do it. And I think the optimal way to do it is the way that it most benefits you. So if you are cycling progesterone in postmenopause or menopause, and half the month you can't sleep, but the other half when you're taking the progesterone you can, to me that isn't a service to you. That is a disservice to you. And so it's really about figuring out what works best for you, and that is a conversation with you and your provider.
Because we're all an N of one. What works for someone may not work for someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even at a place at this point where I'm heading into late perimenopause. I'm like in the middle. I'm not in early anymore. I'm not in late yet, but I am like, do I still keep cycling this, or am I moving more to continuous? Because I will tell you that the number one reason that I personally take HRT is going to be for my brain to function properly. And I've noticed that times where I'm not taking oral micronized progesterone, I'm kind of always just waiting to the second half of my cycle when I can start taking it. And I'm like, well,
Me too.
I'm like, if I'm feeling like this, like maybe I should be thinking about, so there's no right time to decide. Same thing with, there's no right time to know. People ask me all the time, well, when should I start estrogen? It's such a nuanced conversation. For some women, estrogen begins to decline in early perimenopause. For other women, they have robust estrogen levels deep into late perimenopause. It really is based on symptoms. We're not at a point where we're thinking about HRT in terms of longevity or health span optimization. We are still basing HRT on symptom management. And so when you go to your clinician and you've been on oral micronized progesterone for several months, maybe even a year now, and yet you're still having pretty severe perimenopausal symptoms, and even more symptoms are rising up, that's the time that we start talking about bringing on an estrogen patch or some type of estrogen.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. When I was home around Thanksgiving, my mom and I were driving to go get some wild harvested water from a mountain, which I love doing when I'm home.
Love
And
that. Oh, that's amazing. You are the healthiest person that you know.
I'm telling you. Okay, so I had forgotten something and I forget what it was. And my mom goes, "Did you bring your estrogen on this trip?"
I love that so much.
Let's go into estrogen, Mariza. I know you said it's bio-individualized, but when would someone consider estrogen?
I was literally talking about this last night on that call with all these clinicians about when is the right time. And it is a bit challenging from a clinical perspective, and also from a patient perspective, where doctors feel safer prescribing. Well, if they feel the safest prescribing birth control right now. That's where we're at. But that second next step is often they're like, well, okay, maybe she's not looking for oral for an oral birth control. Then we can talk about oral micronized progesterone, right? And progesterone can support hot flashes and night sweats and a lot of those kind of estrogen declining symptoms. So I just want you to know that progesterone can play a major role in this throughout the entire perimenopause transition, and address symptoms that often are designated for estrogen to address. So just a heads up there. But doctors are, the Women's Health Initiative has done us no favors. Doctors are still under this, scary myth that it's causing breast cancer. And what we know about the Women's Health Initiative 20 years later is the estrogen arm reduced the incidence of breast cancer by 23%.
Yes.
And the progestin and estrogen arm, where we used the fake progesterone, the synthetic progesterone, MPA, that it was basically no statistical significance for breast cancer. Although it was the progestin, not the estrogen, that was kind of the villain in the story. And again, not enough of a villain. Like if I was on an island and I had like that was the option, was the MPA and the conjugated equine estrogen versus nothing.
Okay.
I'm doing those. Okay.
Yep.
Like, cause at the like, That's how I would be. And now beautifully, unfortunately, we now, because of the wake of the Women's Health Initiative, it's mostly bioidentical hormones that you're going to be getting prescribed. It's not going to be synthetic hormones like conjugated equine estrogen or MPA. So don't worry, like we're not prescribing progestins, we're prescribing oral micronized progesterone. That is the standard of care when it comes to perimenopause and menopause medications. So with estrogen specifically, we're working that out. The FDA just removed the black box warning, which is the highest level warning on a medication on vaginal estrogen and estrogen based products for perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. And that is going to help clinicians feel safer prescribing and help women feel more confident advocating and asking for it. There's a lot that we've got to conquer in the coming years, but this is a big step in the right direction. Let's say your doctor puts you on oral micronized progesterone because, again, you're dealing with the mood and the brain and the sleep issues, and you're just not feeling like yourself anymore. But then you're on that for 6 months, 9 months, and you're still not feeling so great. And you've kind of played with your dosage around the progesterone, and that's pretty much dialed, and yet your brain still isn't firing, and you're still feeling super irritable, and you're just knowing something isn't right, and you're noticing that it's kind of stretching into the follicular phase of your cycle too. You're kind of just not feeling great all the time. That is when we start having the conversation about, hey, I'm still not feeling great. I still don't feel like myself. Would you be willing to start me on a low dose estrogen patch at the very least? And most doctors, again, when we're talking about a 0.25 dosed patch or a 0.05 dose patch, we're talking about micro dosed levels here. We're not taking you back to 24 years old. We're skating by on some of these levels. And so a 0.05 dosage of estrogen, it's not going to drive a lot of, I mean, everyone's going to be different, but it's pretty darn safe. So, you can advocate for a low dose estrogen patch and go from there. If you are noticing symptoms of unopposed estrogen, kind of, fibrocystic breast, heavy breasts are getting bigger, you're noticing more bloating, more water retention, right, leading to your cycle, then you can talk about like walking some of that, like maybe walking down to a lower dose. So again, you know your body better than anybody. You'll notice if you put that estrogen patch on and actually you're not feeling great after the first 60 days. We can modify that dosage based on that, or we can clean up your gut and your liver so that you're metabolizing it better. It's usually a yes and.
Yes, and one of the things that I came across in my research, and I spoke with Christine Farrell about this on my show, is that the patch was only designed to be used every 3 days.
Yes. So you have to change it twice a week.
That's not enough estrogen.
No, I know. And that's where most doctors are going to feel safe. There's creams, there's gels, there's sprays, there's all kinds of methods. There's even injections. There's a vaginal estrogen that you can use in a ring, which is very expensive. And so I think it's just a matter of figuring out and playing with what works best for you. A lot of people can't afford or find a functional doctor all the time. And even their typical OB-GYN and primary doctor is kind of like lukewarm about hormone replacement therapy. And so, if they are feeling confident, it's often usually going to be with the FDA approved solutions, which is going to be the patch and the oral micronized progesterone. And so we have to start somewhere, usually, just kind of get going and then start working with your body and working with a clinician that really understands that moving forward. And so I'm a big proponent of accessibility. And those are the things that are the most accessible. And so, and then, like for instance, there's a lot of wonderful telemedicine companies out there like MIDI Health and My Alloy and Joy Wellness, Joy and Blokes. And again, you're going to find more cookie cutter protocols that are FDA approved and, and safe. And so just note that you're going to have to really know your body, pay attention to your body as you start to use these medications and advocate for what's working and what's not.
One of the reasons that I wanted to take estrogen was because I learned about what it did from Dr. Felice Gersh.
Yes, I love her. She's actually so I always say, don't prescribe yourself. Dr. Felice Gersh is my prescribing doctor.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I love her. She was on the show. I think she was guest number 5.
I love that. Yeah, She's just, I mean, she's only 45 minutes away from me. So she's in Irvine. Yeah,
She was the one who told me that you have estrogen receptors all over your body. And
everywhere.
what really impressed me was that she doesn't sound like an older woman.
She's so vibrant. A lot of things about Felice. I mean, one, ride hormones until the wheels fall off. That's a big thing. Yes, estrogen is a whole body hormone. It is affecting every system of the body, particularly your cardiovascular health, your literally your vascular walls, your metabolic health, your bone health, your muscle health. We're talking all the big systems of the body, the immune system, it's an immune system modulator, and your brain health. So, yes, and so she's a big proponent as well of cycling progesterone, continuous estrogen. I'm on her protocols. So, and then cycling progesterone. But again, she's also deeply understanding of a patient's journey and experience, and so she definitely has a lot of different tailored protocols depending on the person. But again, she's not cheap. She's not cheap, and she's. I mean, when I finally got I've interviewed her many times. We've been at conferences together a lot, and she's very much the OG when it comes to hormone replacement therapy, and a good friend and colleague. But to get an appointment with her, we're talking 7:30 on a Saturday a.m. She doesn't even have her office team isn't in the office. It's just her. Like, and this woman is in her 70s, like doing the damn thing. And it's so impressive.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. When I said she doesn't sound like an older woman, I feel like in your 70s, your voice maybe starts to crack and change a little bit, but she's so youthful.
Yes, she is so youthful. Yes. Hormones and lifestyle, right? It's a yes and she really does a great job of implementing both.
What would someone use estrogen for?
I mean, well, one, every vagina needs estrogen. So, for vaginal health, in terms of lubrication, decreasing recurrence of UTIs and bladder issues, incontinence, vaginal dryness, libido, that would be a reason why you would need estrogen. For your brain, again, there's a lot of preliminary research, but right now there was a meta study that had just come out looking at starting estrogen within the 5-year window of menopause and it decreasing the incidence of cognitive decline by 32%. So there's a lot of research looking at cognitive function and hormone replacement therapy. I mean, why isn't this being shouted from the rooftops? Reducing the incidence of osteoporosis or osteoporotic fractures by 33%. 1 in 3 women will have an osteoporotic fracture. Many will end up having a hip replacement if that's the bone that broke. 30% of women within the year of having that replacement will die of complications from that surgery. So these are real statistics. UTIs affects quality of life. It's one of the reasons why women end up in a facility, later in life because of these recurrent infections. Obviously, osteoporotic fractures, frailty, sedentary lifestyle is a reason why women end up, needing care and support. This affects their quality of life. But more important, what I always look at is the relationship between estrogen and insulin resistance and cardiometabolic disease. And so as estrogen declines, we become more vulnerable to heart attack and stroke. And so these reasons alone, to me, are reasons to be advocating for yourself to get a hold of hormone replacement therapy. Like, I just want women to know that there's no reason to be afraid of these hormones, that your body's been making them for years. And more women die of a heart attack than anything else. And HRT is one of the best strategies that we've got besides lifestyle strategies to mitigate and shove back cardiovascular disease.
My mom was so afraid to start HRT, but I think after the 2 years of having guests on my show talking about hormone replacement therapy, she finally thought that she would try it. Her boobs were tender, and I think it was because of too much estrogen, but I love what you say about not being afraid.
Yeah, exactly. At least vaginal estrogen, like the big win with the black box warning coming off of vaginal estrogen. So many women, even after cancer treatment, breast cancer treatment, have been denied, vaginal estrogen. And vaginal estrogen really is skincare. It's not systemic. We're talking about topical, local therapy. But what a lot of women don't know is that when you start to lose when estrogen declines and it will affect your vagina and it will impact vaginal atrophy. your vagina will atrophy over the years, because it was these hormones that built that to begin with, that built the labia majora and the labia minora. It's going to affect your quality of orgasms. Vaginal estrogen is a major player here. And so at the very least, all women deserve vaginal estrogen, because again, it's more skincare than it doesn't show up on a lab. You're not going to see vaginal estrogen really on a lab on a systemic level. So I just want women to know that there's a lot. And then we didn't even, we haven't touched upon testosterone, which again, not FDA approved, but it's compounded and available for women. And it is phenomenal in terms of cognitive function, motivation, drive. I call it the build you up hormone. It is a game changer for so many women as well.
We will talk about testosterone, but Mariza, I just have to say, I feel so bad for the women in our lives who are over 50 and weren't allowed to take HRT, or maybe they were on it and taken off of it, because I can't imagine having vaginal atrophy, having your orgasm strength diminish, and then just having to show up in life every day like nothing's happening.
Agreed. No, it is a travesty. It's one of the biggest blunders in medicine that we've ever experienced in definitely in modern day times, where we have denied women, millions and millions of women for over 20 years, the opportunity to get on hormone replacement therapy. And my mom's included in that as well. Your mom, my mom, I mean, the boomers, especially the tail end of boomers. I mean, so many women are struggling with chronic conditions in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, because they weren't offered hormone replacement therapy. Now, I'm not saying that it is the end all be all. That is, but it is a really amazing support strategy to navigate the second half of your life.
Okay, I just wanted to touch on that because sex is such an important part of any relationship, and to have that feel like it would dwindle, I just feel like would be so heartbreaking.
Yeah, or just not even having the energy. Like you think about, I think about libido and intimacy, but let's specifically libido. I mean, we define libido as psychosocial bio. And so if you're exhausted and you've got nothing in the tank and your sleep is crap, like 66% of women in perimenopause and menopause, like you don't have the energy or bandwidth to have sex, but also if it hurts, and your orgasms aren't the way that they used to, again, another barrier to entry. And so all of these things stack up as we begin to lose these hormones that are impacting and profoundly messing with our quality of life. And so just note that when it comes to hormones, it's affecting the biology aspect of things. It's affecting the emotional aspect of things, the stress resilience, and all of that compounds to less intimacy in the bedroom.
I feel like when people think of testosterone, they think of men with really big arms, and those are the only people who would benefit or use it.
No, it is a $2.4 billion industry for men. And man, we do not have a problem prescribing it to men. And we are so dialed in terms of dosage and a deliverability. I mean, it is dialed. But there is still stigma. I mean, I think from the 80s and even the 90s where we saw, but I mean, the amount of testosterone one would have to take to kind of roid out or to like build these massive muscles is just insane. We know that men are experiencing low levels of testosterone. It's going to precipitously decline after the age of like mid 20s to early, like mid to late 20s, basically. But testosterone, like all other hormones, are very sensitive, and they're sensitive to, we were talking about this earlier, takeout food and plastic containers and endocrine disruptors. It's sensitive to, well, not having sex and not moving your body, sedentary lifestyle, not sleeping enough. Are we surprised, right? That these hormones are like, I can't function if you're not taking care of yourself. And so, that's why we need to be a healthy host for hormones. But as a result, testosterone levels can drop sooner than expected. For women, we will have half the amount of testosterone as our 20s by the time we're 51 years old, give or take. It is more than just libido. Although right now, the only clinical reason why we would prescribe testosterone to women is going to be hypogonadism or low libido. Those are the only reasons why we would give it to women. And we're hoping that that's going to change in the coming years. But obviously, it's being prescribed off-label for all kinds of things. And it's important to note that testosterone is the most biologically active hormone in a woman's body, 4 times the amount of estrogen. So we really need it, particularly for our brain.
Okay, can you just say that one more time? If someone's driving, they're doing the dishes, can you please just say that one more time?
So testosterone is not just libido. It's not just hypogonadism. We're talking about brain health. We're talking about confidence, motivation. We're talking about muscle recovery. We're talking about muscle building. It is literally your build you up hormone. So if you want to feel built up, testosterone is where it's at. So important to be looking at those numbers, test, don't guess, and looking at a free testosterone, a total testosterone, and a sex hormone binding globulin. But a majority of women that I see in midlife, especially in perimenopause, have suboptimal testosterone levels and a suboptimal sex hormone binding globulin level as well. So it's not binding up the testosterone. We are just depleted.
And it's so important what you mentioned about testosterone for your brain and feeling good. There are days where I'll feel sluggish and I'm like, it's so hard for me to focus. And I'm like, oh, I forgot to rub on my testosterone.
Yes. And man, it's like a light bulb moment. I will tell you too, after I had my son, my libido had packed its bags and was just gone. I was just dead down there. I remember finally starting testosterone. I think my levels were, I want to say 10 nanograms per deciliter. It was low. And I was like, oh, okay. So I starting testosterone and when your libido comes back online and you have forgotten what it feels like, you're like, oh, there you are. But I take testosterone specifically. Again, most of the hormones that I'm taking is for my brain.
I was speaking to a woman who said she had gone to MIDI and they didn't want to give her hormone replacement therapy because she wasn't having hot flashes. And I was like, she's having other symptoms.
Yeah. I've never had a hot flash. I've never had a night sweat. Well, okay, I did in the first couple of weeks of postpartum. That happens. But not in peri. No, but I've had severe brain fog. I've had low mental energy. I've had rage. I've had no stress tolerance whatsoever. Talk about, not having capacity, just packing its bags. Like it's the brain. I mean, there's nothing more scary than feeling like your brain capacity is shifting without permission. And hormones are a major player there. I think we have to shift the conversation to these hormones being neuroendocrine hormones. They are binding to receptor sites all over the brain. And the reason why women don't feel like themselves is because these hormones are declining and the brain is feeling it. And obviously we talked about the physical symptoms as well, but the brain related symptoms in perimenopause are so destabilizing that it is a crime that we are not offering solutions to women as they navigate this transition.
One of the other things I've learned about testosterone is that it can help you recover from injuries faster and it can help you sleep.
Yes, give it a go. I always tell women with hormones, and again, look at the risk benefit analysis for you. All of those things are important. Work with a provider. This is just information and education. But here's the thing. Your body's been making these since puberty, by the way, and you can always start and tailor. And if you don't love it, you can come off of them. Like you figure it out. And so work with your body, find what is your N of one status and state and go from there. And so it's not like once you start them, I mean, I'm a big fan of once you start them, like right into the wheels fall off. But once you start them, it's not like it's you have to take them for the rest of your life. Like you get to decide, and right now, I mean, we're fighting really hard where doctors are taking women off of HRT in their 60s for no good reason. And here's the thing about hormones. Let's say you've been taking them for the last 10, 15 years, you're in your 60s and your doctor takes you off. That bone protection, that cardio protection, that metabolic protection, it's gone. Like you're only protected while you have the hormones. And that's why they are a tool of prevention. They're not great at treatment. They're a tool of prevention. And that's why we're noticing that women really benefit from them in perimenopause, not menopause. I mean, you benefit from menopause too, but why would we wait until your hormones have bottomed out to get started? So right. we're seeing a lot of benefits when women are very symptomatic due to declining hormones.
I love the protection that I get and the way that I feel. And I know everybody has the right to make that choice for themselves. But even for my mom, she didn't get started till her mid 60s. And now she plans on being on them forever.
Yes. Yes.
And okay, we talked about when to take progesterone, but we didn't talk about when to take estrogen and testosterone. So when do you take those?
So for some estrogen creams, it's every day. If it's a patch, it's twice a week. If it is a If it is injected, which is not very common, it depends on what you're using. And that can be weekly, it can be by monthly. It depends on the dosage. I do like finesse. I like to be able to finesse it. So, in terms of, creams are great, they're compounded, but again, not FDA approved, accessibility harder. Patches, again, you can play with those. You can work with your provider to kind of play with dosage. And again, you're just changing them every single week. But you're using it every day. Basically, it's all month long. There's no break in estrogen ever. If you have a doctor who's telling you to take an estrogen break, meh, find another doctor. I'm not a fan. Estrogen, she's available 24/7. Okay, and then testosterone, same situation. Depending on how you're taking it, creams, it's every day. Troche, although again, in terms of bioavailability and it being in the system, the amount of time you want, it's not going to last as long. So, but some people do like it that way, and that's daily. And then if you are doing an injection, it's weekly.
I have a bit of a complicated question because I thought when you took estrogen, you had to take progesterone to slough off the lining since estrogen causes the uterine lining to grow. If you're only taking progesterone 2 days out of the week, but you're taking estrogen all the time, are there any deleterious consequences?
So the only reason why progesterone was prescribed initially was because we did see an uptick in endometrial cancer with only estrogen. So conjugated equine estrogen, that's Premarin, was what was the gold standard for since the 50s, basically 50s, 60s, 70s. But in the 70s, we started to see endometrial cancer due to unopposed estrogen. As a result, we were like, hey, we'll solve this problem with the progestin. And that's when MPA came on the market, a progestin that women's it was continuous. Ultimately, it became Primpro, and you took it together. And so it was always prescribed continuously because we only knew what we knew until we knew better. Now, if you have a uterus, it is required that most doctors are going to tell you to take it continuously, even in perimenopause. But what we know about perimenopause, as we talked about earlier, you are still cycling, you're still making some hormones. So typically you're taking estrogen continuously and you are cycling progesterone for 13 days out of the month in the luteal phase of your cycle. That will give you uterine protection. Also, it will give you the progesterone that you need in the luteal phase of your cycle to function as a human being. So there's that. At some point in time when you are stopped cycling and you get to decide if you want to just continue cycling progesterone or if you want to take it continuously. Your typical OB-GYN is going to tell you to take it continuously, but you get to decide what you want to do.
So I'm taking estradiol topically. I love it. Sometimes I'll put it in my ears and it'll stop my ears from itching. Thank God.
I love it.
But I'd love to hear what estrogen you're on because I had someone on my show say Bi-Est was kind of an old-fashioned way of taking estrogen. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
E2 is estradiol. It is the main hormone during our reproductive years, and it's the hormone that's protecting your heart, your bone, your brain, all those things. And that's what you're going to find in a patch. I don't know if we don't see E1 estrone in a patch ever. So it's an E2 patch. I'm on a patch. So if you're wondering what Dr. Felice Gersh is recommending to me, it is a patch. It is estradiol, and it is a higher dosage than what you normally see for standard, standard starter pack of estrogen. So I'm on a 0.1 estrogen dosage. So just if you're wondering where I'm at, you won't typically see that in your typical OB-GYN office. They'll usually start you with a 0.05 or a 0.025. So just a heads up. Again, I think this nuance is really important just as you're communicating and having conversations. I am not recommending any particular dose for you, but just sharing some of what's out there. Now, in the functional medicine world, in the compounding estrogen world, there is a product called Bi-Est. And that is where it is a majority. It's like 2/3 estrone, so E1, and that's what we would make during. We don't make it during our childbearing years until it's really a pregnancy hormone more than anything. And then the 1/3 is estradiol, and the argument is that you would convert the two. back and forth, but it doesn't actually happen, and that estrone reduces inflammation. Remember, we talked about estrogen being an inflammation or immune system modulator, but it's a very old school thinking. And the problem with Bi-Est in an estrone predominant um, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy solution is that it doesn't lend to a lot of the protection that estradiol brings to the table. And unfortunately, it doesn't actually convert over to E2 that easily and effortlessly. And so I am not a fan of Bi-Est. I'm not a fan of a predominantly estrone based hormone replacement therapy solution. So I'm a big fan of it predominantly being E2 estradiol.
Thank you. All right. Now, I really have to tickle my own itch. Why are you on a higher dose of the patch?
Yes, great question. I have migraines. I have chronic migraines. And one of the things that we are playing with my protocols, and again, it is up for review, is that we're under the impression, based on protocols that Dr. Gersh has studied personally in clinical practice and that I have seen personally play out, is that if we can increase my estradiol levels, that we can kind of mitigate that estradiol decline that happens at the end of ovulation and as you head into menstruation. So that's the reason why I'm on a higher dose patch, is specifically to mitigate migraines.
Oh, so interesting. I would love to find out how you're feeling on it and if it's changing anything.
Unfortunately, not yet. And that's just it. The one thing about perimenopause that is tricky and that we're looking deeper into is that it does show that it becomes a default inflammatory state. And, again, when hormones are erratically declining and erratically binding to receptor sites, that puts the body in a state of not feeling so safe. And so we do see an uptick in autoimmunity. We see an uptick in migraines, which, in a way is a form of inflammation of the brain and a form of autoimmunity. Some functional doctors would argue that migraines are a type of autoimmunity. Again, even like endometriosis is a type of autoimmunity, but it's technically not in the category of that yet. And we're like, okay, well, what's the elephant in the room that's driving this inflammation? Well, it's going to be declining. It's erratic, declining fluctuations, and so as a result, we're trying to figure out like, well, what are ways that we can mitigate inflammation across the board? One of those strategies is like we bring hormones back in to kind of fill in the gaps. But then also there's a lot of strategies that we can implement to reduce inflammation. But the thing about migraines, like a lot of things around that are specific to women, cognitive decline being one of those as well, is that we just haven't studied a lot of it. We don't understand a lot of the mechanisms for migraines. And 80% of migraine sufferers are women. And a lot of those migraines will begin, that onset usually will be in midlife. So I've had migraines since I was a little girl. I had a gap for many, many years where I didn't have them. I thought I cured them. I got pregnant at 41 years old. They came back with a vengeance and they've been with me ever since. And so there's probably, yeah, it's inconsistent. Like I'd like to tell you that, what's helping me more than probably the estrogen, if I had to be honest and vulnerable, is the progesterone. And that's another reason why I've debated going on continuous oral micronized progesterone, is because if progesterone is helping to mediate migraines, why wouldn't I take it every single day? So all these things, again, every individual, you got to kind of figure out what works for you based on what you're going through.
Well, stay tuned. We'll have to have you back on the show to talk about how that's going if you decide to do continuous progesterone. Now, Mariza, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about anxiety, because I feel anxious a lot of the time. My husband and I are doing long distance. I don't have someone to help take out the trash and do the dishes. I have to clean the whole apartment myself. And there's some days where it just feels so overwhelming, even though I am on HRT, even though I journal and do breath work and do these things. What kind of advice do you have for people with anxiety?
Oh, I love this question. And I know it is such a Such a big topic too, particularly in midlife. If anxiety had not really been a player and all of a sudden it comes up for review, you're just like, what is going on? And typically if the pharma GABA isn't working and the oral micronized progesterone isn't working and the estrogen isn't working, you're on the hormones, you're doing all the things, I would say then it's time to start looking into um more trauma-based therapies. So sometimes we kind of got to go a little bit deeper. A good friend of mine, Dr. Amy Appigan, just wrote The Biology of Trauma, and how ultimately, and I was just interviewing Dr. Jeffrey Bland, who is the father of functional medicine, right before this call. And we were talking about ultimately, what does this all mean in terms of us feeling anxious or us having an immune system or having autoimmunity. And it really all stems from our bodies feeling safe. Is our body feeling safe? And there's three ways that our bodies are taking in information. One, the biology, right? So we could be having, again, neurotransmitters that are not just showing up, or hormones that aren't showing up and binding to receptor sites. It could be that are that we've got that, well, our thoughts are influencing our emotions. And then we also have situations where things are coupled, like let's say a dog barking lights you up, or your house being messy lights you up. Like there's these couplings that can drive this level of anxiety. And so, a lot of the work that Dr. Amy Appigan does is really around, one, understanding what's driving the lack of safety in the body. So getting clarity on that, and implementing somatic based strategies. So whether that is parts work or that is working with a somatic therapist, just kind of going a little bit deeper. So that's usually what I'm saying, is like getting to the root of what's driving that lack of safety in the body. And that may not be a supplement, that may not be breath work, that may be going a little bit deeper.
Oh, I like that. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit because I feel like you're my hero for having a child at 41. I am 40 and I have a lot of friends approaching their 40s who want to get pregnant. So, how do we navigate this world of our perimenopause symptoms and trying to fall pregnant?
Such a good question. I love this. And it's possible, right? And we get to explore those options. This is a multi-prong question answer. It's a remarkable and beautiful thing that women can 3D print human beings. We really are the Ferrari. Men are kind of the Hondas. Like we are
Yeah.
the blueprint that was all built. And I mean, it makes so much sense because we are the ones that are creating life. And the amount of energy and mitochondrial capacity that is necessary just to even ovulate every single month, let alone actually conceive and make a human, is pretty remarkable. And so I always tell women that it really starts with the state of our metabolic health, and really shoring up our mitochondria, and then also looking at hormones, making sure that we're taking a look, we're tracking our cycle, we're looking at hormones. And many of us are going to need oral micronized progesterone just to get pregnant in our late 30s and 40s. Making sure that we've got good egg quality, and making sure that we've got good cellular energy. I mean, that is really the name of the game. And so there's a lot of things that we can do to do that. My book really is a guide. I have a friend who just got pregnant literally at 40 years old last month. I get friends pregnant all the time,
Oh.
because when we optimize your cellular energy, when we optimize your mitochondria, we get you on the hormones, like your body is receptive to conception. A good friend of mine, Dr. Ann Shippey, just came out with a book literally last month called The Preconception Revolution. Not the peri-revolution like mine, but the
Okay.
preconception revolution. And this is what she does. I mean, she gets women in their late 30s, their late reproductive years, or late 30s and early 40s pregnant. And it's all about mitochondrial optimization and calming that immune system and optimizing for hormones. And so if you're looking for a guide, Dr. Ann Shippey or Dr. Cleopatra, both of them are phenomenal at preconception protocols. I primed up for a whole year for my son. So a little bit of like, I was 38 years old. We were starting to get ready to have a baby, and I ran the gamut of tests, and I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And so I took an entire year to get my Hashis into remission before I even started the pregnancy journey. So I spent a year getting myself into remission, a year cleaning up my inflammatory biomarkers, getting my metabolic health in line, and then I followed basically a Primester program, a 6-month program where I reduced my toxic load. I was on a massive supplement stack, basically a preconception supplement stack. I managed my nervous system. I did trauma work. I mean, girl, I was cleaning up my epigenetics basically to create a super baby. And I will say that, full on bragging, my son can do long division at the age of 4. He can do all the
I can't
multiplication.
do long division at the age of 40.
He's a little rock star. He can read. I wanted a super baby. I reverse engineered how do I create a little super brain? And I started doing that 6 months prior to even the idea of conception. So I would say that, there's a lot of intention that goes into that, you're taking the time to shore up your mitochondria, to shore up your cellular energy, to reduce your toxic load, to support your gut microbiome, to get your mind right and get your emotions right around it, and to make sure that your hormones are dialed. I think all of those pieces are needed. We're in a time, an interesting inflection point. I was just talking about this with Dr. Jeffrey Bland today, where we are seeing infertility rates skyrocket. And so it is absolutely possible, but I think we just got to go in with intention. Gone are the days where someone can sneeze on you and you get pregnant. I came from a Catholic upbringing, and that was always abstinence was the only way. And so I remember my family growing up, like if someone could sneeze on you and you would get pregnant, and I'm just, like, I wish it was that simple, so especially as we get older. So.
Well, I definitely want to have you back on the show because I feel like that could be an hour and a half conversation of how to prime your
I was
body.
trying to summarize as fast as possible.
Yes, no, that's okay. I know we've been talking for a while, and I promise to let you go soon, but I really wanted to ask you why we should be using essential oils.
Yeah, I love that. They are basically chemical constituents from plants that we can leverage for our own biochemistry. We were always meant to work with plants. Plants were the initial medicine. When we think about that, even polyphenols in our blueberries and our dark chocolate and the pigment in all of our fruits and veggies. I mean, like, that's molecular information. So I put peppermint on before every single interview, right behind my ears, to kind of perk up and just feel more energized. And I use deep blue, like a kind of like a tiger balm type of thing. I've got a lot of neck trauma to kind of just calm down those muscles. But we use lavender before bed every night with my son for a part of his sleep routine, a part of my routine. And what I love about essential oils is that I believe all of us deserve wins. Emotional wins, mental boost wins, and oral micronized progesterone, as amazing as it is, it's going to take a minute to get going, and so sometimes you need a reset, a state change instantaneously. And that's what essential oils bring to the table, is they instantaneously change your state. So if you came from a really stressful, hard day at work, and you just drove for 45 minutes on the road just to get home, and you're about to step into the house, and you just got crap energy, you can have an essential oil in the car, like a bergamot or lavender or jasmine or something, and just breathe it in, take a couple of seconds, reset your state, and walk in and show up the way that you want. And so that's what I think I love about it. It's a state change. It can support, gosh, from menstrual cramps to neck pain to, I even to dull out my migraines. I mean, again, is it getting rid of my migraines? Absolutely not. Now, I have a lot of medication for that. But it can really ease out the migraine pain. And so there's so many ways to use them. We use them to boost our immune system, to boost our mood, to boost our cognitive function, and just to feel good. They're instantaneous. They work very quickly. And I think sometimes we deserve something that works really, really, really fast.
We've spoken about so much today. When this episode airs, it will be January 2nd, and people are going to be starting their New Year's resolutions.
Yes.
I would love to hear, where do you recommend women start?
I'm going to say the book, because the book does have a 5-week plan that is metabolically driven, that is designed to have a profound impact on your cellular energy. And that's how we want to feel when we start the new year. But I think it's important to ask yourself a very important question. And that is, what would I love? What would I love stepping into a new year? How do I want my body to feel in the next 30 to 90 days? And the reason why my podcast is called Energized is I've asked this question to over 100,000 women and 85% of them have said more energy. I would like to have more of it. And I will tell you, Ashley, even when I've got good energy, I always want a little bit more. And so that's really around mitochondrial optimization. That's really around good cellular energy. The 5-week program, I mean, it walks you through it in such a beautiful way so that you really have everything you need to get started, from what to eat to how to move, how to regulate that stress response system, how to talk to your provider about hormone replacement therapy. Like, that is a great starting point. But I think first and foremost, it's getting clear on what would you love for yourself? What would you love for your body? What would you love for your new year? And start going from there. Mindset is the number one piece of the puzzle that we don't talk enough about. It's so easy to get stuck in how we don't want to feel or how crappy we do feel, when it's really about, okay, all right, I feel crappy. What am I going to do about it? How am I going to reframe this? How am I going to take one step forward in the right direction? Even on my migraine days, I still clock 10,000 steps. You know what I'm saying? Like, if anything, it's a reminder that my body is looking for more love and support, not to be stuck in the pain. And so I think that's the thing I would tell all women, getting clarity and knowing that you deserve a gold standard of care. This book is one of the pathways to get there.
All right. We will make sure to put everything in the show notes. Mariza, it's been so delightful speaking with you. As we wrap up, I ask all my guests the same closing question, which is, what haven't I asked you that you'd like my listeners to know?
What haven't you asked me? Gosh, we have covered the gamut today. I did mention it. I connected about it a couple times, but just understanding, regulating your nervous system, sending your brain safety signals. I have learned that as long as I book in my day with a lot of safety signals, time for myself, that a lot of crap can happen in the middle and I can weather through it. Take out time out for yourself, connect with your besties, and do the things that help you to feel regulated. I would say that is the big step. If there's anything that you walk away from this conversation today, besides grabbing the book, it is spending time with the people that you love, doing the things that you love. That's going to help you feel more safe. That's going to help you feel more regulated. And that's going to help you to just live a beautiful and more healthful life.
Beautiful parting words. Please tell my listeners where they can go to find you and where they can buy your book.
Yes, the book is everywhere books are sold. If you are like me and you're a busy working mama, Audible or audiobooks is where it's at. If you've got a premium Spotify account, you can listen to it for free up to 15 hours. It's available everywhere books are sold. And I have bonuses. I have workout videos. I have more recipes. I have blood sugar friendly mocktails. I mean, name it. I've got everything you could possibly want to move the needle in a profound way that works quickly. That's going to be at drmariza.com/book. Get your goodies. Just put your email and your name in. You do not need to put the book order number in there. I'm not trying to get you to work harder. I want you to have the things that you deserve immediately, instantaneously. My podcast is called Energize with Dr. Mariza, and you can find me on Insta at DRMARIZA.
Mariza, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, honey.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed today's episode, a quick shout out on Instagram or leaving a review would make a positive difference. Or even better, share this podcast with someone you think might benefit from this information. You can get in touch with me on socials. I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is Ashley_Deely. Until next time, this podcast is presented for educational and exploratory purposes only. The published content is not intended to be used for diagnosing or treating any illnesses, disease, or disorders. Those responsible for this show disclaim any responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of this information presented by myself or my guests. Please consult with your healthcare provider before using any products or services referenced in this podcast. Episodes on the Welcome to Wellness podcast may at times cover sensitive topics, including, but not limited to, depression, suicide, 5G, nootropics, circumcision, birth control, the Women's Health Initiative, the use of plants medicine, abortion, geoengineering, terrorism, gender, AI, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You are advised to refrain from listening to this podcast if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. However, if these topics interest you, you just may have found your tribe. The information or opinions expressed on the Welcome to Wellness show are solely the views of the individuals involved and by no means represent absolute facts. Opinions expressed by the host and the guest can change at any time. The views of my guests are solely their views, and the Welcome to Wellness show does not accept responsibility for them. Any action you take based on the information contained within this podcast is strictly at your own risk. The Welcome to Wellness host, Ashley Deely, will not be liable for any losses or damages in connections with the use of this podcast. You should take all necessary steps to ascertain the information you receive in this podcast is correct and has been verified. None of the guests or contributors on the Welcome to Wellness podcast will be responsible for your use of the information contained therein. Under no circumstances will the Welcome to Wellness show or my affiliates, partners, suppliers, licenses, or guests appearing on the show be liable for any direct or indirect consequences or damages arising from your ability or inability to access this podcast. All intellectual property rights belong to me, Ashley Deely, and include but are not limited to the copyright and any other rights in the design. You are permitted to use the Welcome to Wellness podcast for personal use, but not for commercial use without license. You may not make recordings. If you breach these terms, you lose the right to the Welcome to Wellness podcast, and you must destroy or return any copies or recordings you've made. Guests on the Welcome to Wellness podcast may at times provide information or read extracts from third-party copyrighted work. The Welcome to Wellness podcast does not provide any medical or professional advice within these episodes and should not be used as a replacement for medical or clinical care. If you take any action or inaction as a result from the content you consume within the Welcome to Wellness podcast, this is based solely on your decision, and Ashley Deely and the Welcome to Wellness podcast host and my guests cannot be held responsible or liable for any of the consequences of such action or inaction. Thank you.